Hey everybody, Film Brown here, down in the vaults. Got a lot of nice light going on today. Need that on a kind of a gloomy day like today. And, we need a good movie too to wake ourselves up and to put ourselves in the good mood. I think I've got the ticket for you tonight. It's a film called Bluebeard. Bluebeard, 1944. This is another one of those great Edgar Ulmer films shot at PRC, one of those little Poverty Row studios that Edgar Ulmer got himself involved with. You know the story of Ulmer. He was blacklisted by the major studios because of his getting involved with the wife of one of the executives at Universal, and eventually Shirley Ulmer became his wife, Shirley Ulmer, and became the script supervisor for all of the films that he worked on. Bluebeard was one of them. This film stars John Carradine and Gene Parker. This happens to be one of the great acting jobs that you're going to see John Carradine performing. Now, you know that he was a very good thespian. I think of him in the John Ford films. He was very often sort of a lackey, a small guy. He played Hatfield, for instance. Remember in Stagecoach, the gambler. He also played in Drumsel on the Mohawk. And of course, maybe one of his more famous jobs was playing the preacher, kind of the crazy preacher in The Grapes of Wrath, another one of the John Ford films. But there was another side to John Carradine, not just that serious secondary character type of guy that you see in the John Ford films, but he played in a few horror films. Matter of fact, he was in some of the Universal stuff during the 40s. He's in Bluebeard. He thinks this is probably... I was reading, he claimed this being one of his favorite films. He thought that this was his best role that he had, and he does a remarkable job. When I think of him in his later other horror films, and he was in some Philippine horror films, etc., you think of him being a little bit over the top. Of course, this kind of role playing in horror films, you just by nature seem to want to go over the top, like a Vincent Price does. But in Bluebeard, Ulmer is able to get out of him a very subdued acting job. Very quiet. There's a quiet intensity about him. He plays a guy named Gaston Morel, who is runs a puppet venue. And he happens to be a Bluebeard as well. And there's no secret about it. He's a killer from the get-go at the beginning of this film, so I'm not giving anything away. He's a rather interesting figure who has some... I'm not going to give this away, why he decides to do the murders that he does. It's kind of an interesting thing, but he does a beautiful job in enacting that. The film was shot by a guy named Eugene Shefton. And you're not going to see his name on the credits. He was a cinematographer, but he didn't have a union card, so he wasn't able to get credit for it. And but you'll see his name under set designer or something like that, I think. And actually, set design was pretty much in Ulmer's backyard because that's where he started. This film really has a beautiful look of a Parisian world. Very much harkens to a lot of the Phantom of the Opera type of look. Sewers, viaducts and water running under structures, and really a nice subterranean feel. Also, rooftops become sort of an important part of Paris. And you see that a lot in horror films. You see that in the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, in a way, started a lot of that rooftop location for horror film shooting. You see it in other types of films too along the way. Murders of the Rue Morgue, the Robert Florey thing with Bela Lugosi, uses rooftops real well. Another thing about this film, Carradine, I hope I got his name pronounced right, Leo Carradine is the guy who wrote the music for this, and he wrote some of the other scores for Ulmer as well. He writes an interesting score for this. It almost never stops in this film, from the beginning to the end. And if you're a kind of a classical music buff, you will see little snippets of things that pop up from Mussorgsky's, for instance, pictures at an exhibition and things. Because Morel not only is a puppeteer, but he's also a painter. But woe to those guys he paints. Not a good idea to become a subject for him. But maybe giving away too much. But the whole thing, listen to the music. It's like almost like a tapestry in and of itself. People It's like an operetta, perhaps. Maybe that's the way to think about it. The puppet play that you see them put on at the beginning of the film, too, this version of Faust that they do, that really gives it that operetta flavor, and that sort of continues on through the whole film. Well, Ulmer always is worth the price of admission. Of course, we charge you nothing. We always bring you the best fare for free. Hope you're enjoying the stuff. Bluebeard 1944 is a nice way to spend an evening, I'm thinking. John Carradine doing one of his best roles. I've always had a soft spot for John Carradine. And the Carradine boys, right? You know, he had a passel of sons, right? Who, well, kind of carried on the lineage. Of course, David Carradine carrying it on best with Kung Fu. Well, let's roll 'em, Smokey.